Welcome to another RPM video. This is going to be a two-part series on how we import a car from Japan and also how we get it ready for listing. So the first part is going to be all about the bidding process, how we interpret auction sheets, the associated costs, the grading system in Japan, how we pay, etc. So we're going to actually buy a car from Japan and show you the whole process. The first part, obviously the bidding, and then the second part will be once that car lands here, going through compliance, getting it ready, getting a groom, whatever it needs, you'll get to be a part of all of that. How exciting. Before we get on to any of the juice about how to actually import a car from Japan, I kind of want to talk to you guys about RPM history and how we got in touch with some of the agents there. So when we first started, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we were trying to ask everyone and anyone on how to import a car from Japan, and the information that we were getting was trash. So we went onto the NZTA website and searched up how to import a car from Japan, and the information there was also trash. They made it seem like it was rocket science where it really isn't. So what we did was we booked some tickets to Japan and we're like, okay, let's just go meet some agents and talk to them face to face and see if we can actually trust these people. If they have premises or whatever, then you can kind of be rest assured that they're not going to run away. We went there, we hooked up with a couple agents, we liked the look of one, we started a relationship. Turned out that these guys don't actually go check out the cars in person. So the first batch of cars that we got from them was absolutely trash. We had rusty chassis, blown engines, etc., etc. So then we quickly learned that you have to make sure that you find the right agent there, which we've eventually done, and it's been amazing, and we're stoked with the relationship that we have now, but it wasn't always like that. Before I do your heads in anymore, let's just start with the process on how to actually import a car from Japan. Sweet, so before everything, let's just talk about the grading system and how it works in Japan. So I don't know if you've looked at Trade Me or whatever, you could probably see that those import cars, sometimes they have auction sheets with them. It's basically just a whole bunch of Japanese scribbles with a number and maybe some things around the body, like lettering or whatever. So the grading system in terms of the number goes from R, which is like repair history. It's definitely probably gonna need like a repair cert over here, which is costly, or it's gonna get flagged at the border with being imported as damage or whatever, so it kind of just devalues the car a little bit. Your grade 1 is basically horrible condition, grade 2 is horrible condition, grade 3 would be like, need some serious panel and paint, but could still be clean underbody and stuff like that, it just needs like repaints. Grade 4 is meant to be a good car. It doesn't really matter what the mileage is, but usually won't need too much panel and paint, the interior will be tidy, etc, etc. And then grade 4.5 is under 100 Ks, doesn't require much panel and paint, is really tidy basically. Grade 5 is basically a new car. You don't really get that with any of the things that we're bringing in. And then if it's an S or 6, 7 or 8, it's usually just it's literally a brand new car with zero Ks. Before we go any further, I kind of want to just talk to you guys about some of the associated costs that come into play when you're bringing the car in from Japan. So firstly, you got your car cost, obviously. Then you got your agent fee, which is around $1,000. Then you got your freight, which is about $1,700, and they could give you some additional costs as well, which is like your bunker adjustment or your heat treatment, which is like $200–300. Then you got your new emissions fee that came out, and majority of the cars that you guys are probably interested in, that's around $2,875. So before we get anywhere, we're already about $5,000 in fees and random stuff, and then we've got to take it through compliance. Compliance fee can be about $500, give or take, and then any repairs that it needs on top of that. So God knows, you know, like it could end up costing you $5,000 just to get it through compliance. And then on top of that, you need to get rego on your plates, which is about $300. So it does really get expensive, especially if it's a cheap car or something like that. You're ending up paying $5,000 regardless of the car, and you've got to add the car cost as well. So just be wary when you're bringing in the car that you kind of take into consideration all those costs rather than just thinking that the price that they've set on their end is the end cost, because it's not usually the case. Sweet, so one of the things that you have to be wary of when you're looking at these auction sheets is that they're not always 100% accurate. The inspector could be friends with the person that's putting the car through the auction and give a higher grade than it actually is. We've had it in the past where we bought in an R grade car, this is before when we used our old agents, and that passed compliance with no repair cert or anything. And then we've had times where the grade 4 car comes and we've had to do a repair cert. So it's not always accurate. So just be wary of that. Sweet, let's have a look at how we would interpret an auction sheet. So when you come here, you can see that this one is a grade R, so it's not something that we'd probably bid on. Over here, they usually have all the issues listed, which is in Japanese, so we're not going to be able to read that, but our agent will be, and he will send us it. And then on the body, you can kind of see that there's all these letterings. So they all stand for an assortment of stuff. U, for example, is like small dent, A is like dent, and then the number next to the A or whatever shows you how deep it is or whatever. So A3 is actually really bad. A1 wouldn't have been that bad. But the ones that I'm really looking for, like scratches and stuff, not a biggie. But corrosion, so C is something that it's like, if it's got corrosion, I'm just not bidding on it. S is rust. Depending on how bad it is, you could maybe get away with it, but usually we just kind of stick away from that too. So if you see a C or a S on your auction sheet, basically stay away. We're going to have a look at this GDR V-Spec, 63,000 Ks, grade 4.5. Looks really good in the photos. We're going to inspect the auction sheet and kind of see what we're checking out. So when we look at the body here, the only things that I can kind of see are some light scratches, a little small dent on the front fender, and then it has this XX. So this XX means that something's been replaced. But if it's in the engine bay, I kind of usually don't know what it is. It could just be a small part, like a pod filter or whatever. So I kind of send it to my agent or bid on it, and then he would kind of tell me. But after I've further inspected this auction sheet, I can kind of see that here with the Ks, it says 62,283, which is really low, but right next to it has a dollar sign. If it has an X, asterisk, dollar sign, anything next to the Ks, it kind of means that that class has been replaced. So that's something that we would not bid on because we don't know how many Ks this is actually done. Let's actually take a look at something that we will place a bid on. So this is a S14 Ks pre-facelift turbo. Looks really cool. You don't really get too many of these coming through auction anymore. When we check out the auction sheet, we can kind of see it's a grade 4C. So the C kind of means that the interior grade isn't amazing, but it'll still be all right. It's the least of our issues. We're looking at the Ks, 142,000 Ks. There's no star, there's no asterisk, so that means that the cluster hasn't been changed, so we can be confident in the kilometers. We're going to look at the blemishes around the body over here. You can kind of see that there's some scratches all around, but there's not too many, and there's also no S, there's no C, there's no double X, so that kind of all points to it being a good condition car. So we're going to chuck a bid on, and how we do that is here. If you can see your budget, I just kind of go down and figure out what I want to put down, and we're going to just put down a bid. So what we have to take into consideration here is that all these cars are wanted around the world. So I'm not going to be able to put a bid of $20,000 and expect to win this thing. It's just not how it works. You basically have to pay above market price and hope that by the time that this car gets into New Zealand, the market price has gone up again. Otherwise, you will not win one of these. So what we're going to do is we're going to put down a competitive bid. Well, we think it's competitive, but usually it's always getting beaten by America or whatever. So we're going to put down a bid of $33,000 here, and that will be plus $3,000 emissions fee, plus whatever else this car will need to get on the road, and then plus any other mechanical issues it might have, which it might have plenty. Like, it's a 27-year-old car. So we've set our budget 2220K yen, 2.2 mil, 33 NZ, and then we just click that set budget. And what that does, it sends my request to my agent. He makes sure that there's nothing obvious on the auction sheet that will put me off. And then he also go check out the car and make sure that it's all good. And him checking out the car is not him driving it. It's him just checking out the underneath, making sure there's no rust or anything like that. But this car might still get to NZ after I paid $36,000 NZ for it, and it might need an engine, or might need a transmission, or might need this, or might need that. So that's kind of the risk that you're taking when you're buying these older cars, especially. That I feel like people underestimate. So if you're just a sole person buying one car and you get the Sylvia and then it has a cooked engine or whatever, you've basically lost money already. But I'm a car dealer. I'm bringing in 30 cars at a time, you know. So even if one has a bad engine, the law of averages kind of works out. But yeah, that's the basic process on how my thought process when I'm bidding on cars, and also how you actually do it through these agents. It's not as complicated as everyone kind of makes it out to be, but you just got to take into consideration the risks of it all as well. Thank you very much for watching our informative video on how we import a car from Japan. There'll be a part 2 coming out that actually shows a physical example that we've brought in from Japan and the compliance process, etc., until it gets listed. And also, just like every other video, I've told you guys that any subscriber gets $500 off any car in their lifetime. So in 10 years time, if you show us that you're subscribed, you get $500 off. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you on part 2.